Welcome back to American Warrior Radio, right here on the Talk to Me station, AM 1300 WMEL, sponsored by AVET Project. Folks, thank you for hanging around. This is important information, and if you can't use it or incorporate it into your situation personally, you may know somebody, a neighbor, somebody that goes to church with you, maybe a coworker that is experiencing a situation like this where a military veteran has passed away and their spouse is trying to figure out whether they have any eligibility for VA benefits. So please, if they can't listen today or if you can't share them, you can direct them to the WMEL website, 1300WMEL.com. They can click on the archives button and you'll see this whole thing laid out in MP3 format, and they can listen to it at their leisure. Glenn, we left after talking a little bit about DIC. What are some, give them some more information about the nuts and bolts here.
Okay, well, we were talking about an example where a veteran had boots on the ground in Vietnam, died from a heart condition, never had filed a claim with the VA, and it looks like that would still result in award of DIC because it's a presumptive condition for ischemic heart disease. Well, I'm going to use the same heart thing, but this is an actual example and shows you why you need to come talk to experts about this. I had a woman whose husband was a retired lieutenant colonel. She was in my office, so it's been a couple of years ago, and we were talking about it, and she said he didn't have anything service connected, didn't really have any major things wrong with him. He just kind of died of this heart attack one day. And I said, well, did he ever have any heart problems on active duty? No, never had a problem. He did have a heart attack 6 months after he got off active duty.
Very revealing.
Yeah. So, guess what? You may not know this, but I do. If you have something like that within a year of you getting off of active duty, whether that be retirement or just plain old separation, it's very possible that can be recognized by the VA as what would have been a service-connected disability, and then they can still approve the dependency indemnity compensation, which they did in this case. But she was all prepared to say, I'm just here to get the burial allowance, that's it.
It's super important because that 1 year window, it generally applies to what they consider or call systemic disorders, something that's kind of like your inside organs. It's something that didn't happen overnight. So they open up this little presumptive window that if you come down with some terrible diagnosis of coronary artery disease, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, diabetes, any of these systemic, inside the body things that affects your entire body, it opens that door, and that's super important.
Oh, absolutely. And again, a key point with that is get professional help. And by the word professional, we mean our services are very reasonable. Free, our favorite word, free.
That's what American Warrior Radio is always going to bring you, is free. So you provide free representation and counseling on how they can get their VA benefits.
That's right. We have 3 nationally accredited service officers who are more than happy to help you out. That's what we're there for. It's our honor to serve you and maximize your opportunity to gain benefits earned by the veteran service that you might not otherwise get without trained professional help.
Okay, so DIC, Dependency Indemnity Compensation, is a monthly benefit paid to a surviving spouse or other eligible dependent of the veteran who passes away from what should be or has to be related to service in some way. What about this whole willful misconduct thing? Can you give an example of why they would be excluded?
Yeah, would not. Let's say that the veteran's on active duty and gets killed in a car wreck while driving the car, and it's determined that he or she was drunk while driving the car. The military in these days are always going to conduct a line of duty determination, and that's going to be called willful misconduct. It was due to the veteran's own misconduct, in that case driving drunk, and no benefit's going to be paid in that kind of situation.
But what it does reveal is if you are on active duty, or you're a guardsman or reservist on active duty for training or mobilized and activated, and something happens to you and you lose your life, your surviving spouse is going to be paid this benefit.
That's right. And there's let's throw in a little more information for you and then give another example maybe, and that's that There's also a kicker in the eligibility status, and that's that you had to be married to the veteran for 1 year, or a child had to be born of that marriage. Now, that's for all the veterans who are off active duty. Now,
why would that be? Why would that?
Well, that would be to prevent gold digging. That's the best way to put it. Yeah, I know this veteran has terminal illness and they're projected to die within the next 2 weeks. So let's get married real quick, and then I can get this benefit. So that's what it's there for. That's what the law is designed for. The 1 year rule. Excellent. Now let me ask you another question, Garen. Let's say, and I've had this actual case come up, that the veteran is deployed to Afghanistan. They married right before he deployed. It's been over there a week. Unfortunately, he gets killed by an improvised explosive device. Okay, so they've been married a week. Is that spouse eligible for DIC? Well, it's even though it's a loss on active duty, had they been married a year, she may have known that he was with the explosive ordnance disposal team and that he was subject to getting killed. You tell me, Glenn. I don't think that's gonna fly. Oh, contraire. That's what I thought. No, they are eligible. It doesn't matter how long you're married. If the veteran dies on active duty, it can be 1 hour, 1 day, 1 year, 10 years. That's important. That's important. Thanks for bringing that up, Glenn. You just heard it. Even if they just gotten married and he got on a plane and headed over there and died the next day, as long as it wasn't due to willful misconduct on his part, they're going to be paid. Plus, there's the insurance benefit, and that's for another day. That's for another day, but it's $400,000 for most people, so it's no chump change anymore. Okay, so that's clear-cut example. If the service member dies while on active duty outside of a line of duty determination that he had something to do with it in a willful misconduct sort of way, the surviving spouse or eligible survivor is going to be paid the benefit. Absolutely. And then this is, after all, as I haven't told you for a long time, the if and or but world of VA benefits. And boy, the DIC is a perfect example of the if and or but world of VA benefits. If you haven't gotten that yet. Yeah, and we got more. Here's an if and or but. If the veteran's rated 100% consecutively for 10 years or more immediately preceding their death, it does not matter what the cause of death is, the spouse will get dependents indemnity compensation under the 10-year rule. How about that? So, let's say the veteran is 100% service-connected for post-traumatic stress disorder, but he dies because, I don't know, he got a blood clot. Okay. Now, you're telling me that she's able to go in there and file the claim and is going to get paid so long as he held that rating for 10 years or longer? That's correct. Outstanding. About the only effects on that is another if and or but part, and that's that if the veteran dies of a service-connected disability and DIC is awarded, the surviving spouse is also eligible for the home loan guarantee program, and in the case of a 10-year death where he didn't die of a service-connected disability, she's not entitled to that ancillary benefit. Okay, now what about this extra money? What's this situation where if the veteran, after he had to have that rating for 8 years or more, and there's a little kicker you mentioned earlier? Boy, that's a good one, because boy, do people get confused about that. Let's take where the veteran was rated 100% for 9 years and dies of a service-connected disability. Then the spouse is entitled to a kicker if she was married 8 years or more immediately preceding the death of the veteran. To that veteran, obviously, not just married. And that's about a $260-something a month kicker onto that $1195. So it's called the 8-year rule. Now, the 8-year rule applies for the marriage eligibility. Doesn't have anything to do with the 10-year rule, which applies to getting the basic DIC awarded to start with. And boy, people get befuddled by that all the time. But it's additional money, and of course the VA is going to recognize it, but you go into a credentialed service officer, they're going to make sure and note that this is the scenario.
they've been married. Here are their dates. So it's going to, unless it's like within a day, and then you have to understand the VA does have some discretion. If it's a week before or even maybe even a month before, I've seen claims go through where they've made the award. They're not that particular when it comes to the death of a veteran, especially if it's related to a service-connected disorder, because it's going to be...
Yeah, I have too. I've seen it where it's, as long as it was within the same month, but it wasn't right down to the day, they still awarded the kicker to it.
Exactly. And another important aspect of all of this is when you go in to see Glenn, he's going to take care of your burial benefits, make application for that, this DIC if it's applicable, because let's break it down again simply. You have to have had a service-connected disorder and you succumb to it. You've got automatic eligibility, right?
Yes.
Okay, let's clear up a little bit right now, though. If a veteran never, let's say you've got a heart problem, never filed a claim for his heart problem, and it's just his medical record, his service medical record is replete with references to heart problems, never filed the claim. And years go by, maybe he served in the 80s, and here we are in 2012, he drops dead from a heart attack. The surviving spouse goes into your office and says, oh, well, I know he had heart problems in service, and he just died last week from a heart problem. I want to get DIC. What's going to happen, Glenn?
Well, we're going to help her file the claim, and first off, we're going to inquire if she has any of his service medical records at home to help the VA out with the evidence up front. We're definitely going to point out the problems that he had on active duty with the heart in the remarks part of the claim to help the VA understand where we're coming from with the claim. We're going to file that claim for her, along with any evidence that she may have relative to that claim, like, well, she's going to have the death certificate, shows died from a heart problem. If she had the older medical records she has about treatment for the heart condition, we would include that along with it. But the main thing here in the example you've given is the service treatment record. So we would want to submit copies of those if the veteran had it and she knows where they're at home.
Right, and the key in bringing this up is when the veteran passes away, their VA, their claims go with them, okay? There are accrued benefits and there's some other, gray areas that we can talk about, but the bottom line is if the veteran did not file a claim for service-connected disability compensation prior to their death, it's going to be more than an uphill struggle to try and get a causal or a nexus drawn between the two.
Exactly. And
that's why it's so important to file now.
Oh, yeah, and that's why it's important to submit the evidence now with the claim if you've got it, because guess what? Things get lost in our National Records Management System, and the VA,
do they?
Oh yeah, and the VA may not have that to prove what you contend is the fact pattern, and that's that there was many heart problems on active duty. Let's prove it to them right up front. If you've got the evidence in your hand, we want to send that.
Exactly. So it's not always cut and dried. You always want to make application, but you want to do it skillfully through somebody that knows what they're doing. You don't want to just throw a bunch of paperwork to the VA regional office. You mentioned the loss of records or records destruction. We mentioned earlier at the Veterans Day celebration we had Staff Sergeant Jerry Walter, World War II vet. Well, guess what? That fire everybody talks about in 1973 at NPRC in St. Louis, tens of thousands of World War II veterans had their records.
Oh, more than tens of thousands.
I'm sure. Totally destroyed, and they never did make much of an effort to reconstruct them. Had Jerry not kept a copy of his discharge document, we wouldn't have ever been able to do anything. But fortunately, he did.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's a great example of what we're talking about. And when Guerin says NPRC, he's talking about the National Personnel Records Center, and they had a fire that gutted a major part of that record center in 1973, and the Air Force and Navy and Marines didn't get as banged as the Army did. A lot of the Army records were just completely destroyed, unrecognizable than what was left in the ashes. And those people, without having something in their own possession, are left holding the ball, not being able to prove.
And it's a real tragedy.
It's a real tragedy.
That's why what Glenn mentioned earlier, it's so important whenever you submit something to the VA, especially on your own, but certainly through a credentialed service officer, there's going to be a paper trail, a copy of it. You got to keep copies. Anything you submit on your own to the Veterans Administration, you want to send it at least return receipt requested, certified return receipt requested, so you have got a signature of somebody signing for it. You can prove they got it.
Yeah, and if you insist upon sending it yourself, keep a copy of everything you sent. If you come to my office and say, I sent this, and this, but I didn't keep any copies, well,
Too bad.
You hamstring me a little bit in the effectiveness of the help I can provide. Then I have to pray that the VA has it, and there's problems with that. They don't always have it.
Yeah,
for whatever reasons.
We're not here to beat up on the VA, but let's be just fact-based here for a moment. Things get lost.
Absolutely. Well, they get thousands of pieces of mail literally every day in the VA regional office in St. Petersburg, which is the only one in Florida, and it's the busiest regional office in the nation. So just sheer workload ensures that something's going to go wrong. Murphy's Law is going to apply.
Exactly. So you've got to keep copies of anything that goes into the VA, and especially important documents, service medical records, obviously.
Oh, extremely important.
Discharge documents. So getting back to DIC, so you had a service-connected disorder, as you mentioned, say a heart problem, and you succumbed to it. Your spouse, so long as she was married to you for a year or longer,
correct,
is going to be eligible for this DIC.
Pretty much. There's another if and or but to it, and that's the living together rule. You needed to be living with the veteran at the time of the demise. Well, you had to live continuously from marriage to the demise of the veteran, unless, here's an if and or but for you, unless y'all were separated not due to the surviving spouse's problem or reason, but due to the fact that the veteran didn't want to live with you anymore, for whatever those reasons may be. All kinds of circumstances come up with that, but you're still legally married. Now,
you may be geographically separated by the choice of the veteran, and she could still be eligible.
Yeah.
So long as you're still married.
Yeah, the legal word would be estranged. You're married, but you're not living together for whatever the reason may be. Now flip this a little bit. Conversely, if you leave the veteran, then that's different. You may not be eligible.
Really? Tell us about that, Glenn.
Well, I know the spouse, for whatever reason, decides to run off and leave the veteran. They never take action to get legally divorced. It wasn't the veteran's fault that they're not living together. It's the spouse's fault in this example. And so VA most likely is going to rule that you're not eligible because you didn't live together continuously from marriage till the date of the veteran's death. That's just the way it is.
So as you mentioned, that estrangement, the spouse of the veteran flies the coop and goes off with a boyfriend or conversely a girlfriend, and the veteran's left there by him or herself. That may not play well with the VA regarding DIC benefits.
It could result in denial, as I was talking about. So
behave yourselves.
Behave yourselves, and every claim is decided on the facts of the claim. And as you can see, there's some if and or but rules that significantly affect eligibility in this DIC world.
For sure. Now, what about this restored entitlement business when situation, veteran passes away, surviving spouse gets paid DIC, then surviving spouse gets remarried?
Okay, if she or he, to terminate the remarriage, then potentially eligible to get reinstated to dependents indemnity compensation. Now, there's a date back in November of '90 that has an impact upon this, but that's so far in the past, it's usually not a player these days. So basically, if you were once getting DIC, you remarry, lose the DIC, then you can go back and apply and get the DIC again once you terminate the remarriage.
Okay.
Now, there's an exception to that.
Oh, gee, share with us.
Okay. If you remarry at age or after age 57, you continue to receive the dependents indemnity compensation even after you're remarried.
Really? When did this come about?
Oh, about 5 years ago.
See, folks, this is what I'm saying. The laws are always changing, and in this case, it's been liberalized.
Yeah. And it was liberalized to kind of be consistent with survivor benefit plan. That's subject
SBP,
for another,
right.
Yeah, subject for another day, but we are going to talk about it just a hair here because there's a trade-off between survivor benefit plan and DIC. But in SBP, if you remarry age 55 or later, you continue to get the SBP, and sort of making this comparable to that. If you remarry age 57 or later, you keep the DIC, kind of consistent with that SBP rule.
Okay, so getting it broken down into brass tacks again, dependency indemnity compensation is a benefit available to the surviving spouse or eligible dependent of a veteran who passes away due to a service-connected disorder. That's a for sure thing.
Yes.
Now, okay, so that's solid there. We got that. Everybody got that out there in Radio Land? Okay, that's
Raise
easy.
your hand.
Now, there are all kinds of little gray areas and shades of gray here. Regarding that 10-year rule, though, I think that's another important one, because a lot of people get freaked out saying, oh, she may not get it. I need to get this thing service-connected or that thing service-connected. If he or she, the veteran, has had 100% rating for 11, 12, 15 years, no matter what they
Continuous, it never went down and back up.
Gotcha. So, and they pass away from, whatever. She or he, the surviving spouse, is going to be eligible for DIC.
That's right. Cause of death is not a matter in those instances.
And you mentioned the kicker, which is a financial situation where you've held the rating of 100% for 8 years and you've been continuously married.
That's right.
And what's that amount to again, dollar-wise?
Oh, the kicker is around $260 right now, factoring in the COLA that came about a year ago. And before we run out of time, I want to just mention real quick something that comes up with military retirees surviving spouses, and that's that the veteran may have taken out what's called the survivor benefit plan, which is like an annuity insurance that
they have to pay into it.
Yeah, they pay premiums every month until age 70, and there's a trade-off between DIC and that. You will, if also eligible for DIC, the surviving spouse will get the DIC basic amount $11.95, and then if there's any remaining SBP, they would get that. So she gets the $11.95 DIC, and the reason that is because it's tax-free. And then let's say $14.95 was the SBP entitlement, then gets the additional $300 from SBP and a refund of all the premiums equal to that $1,195 additional SBP she's not getting, which can be a significant amount of money. Bear in mind that refund check is taxable, because when you pay the premiums for SBP, you pay them tax-free. So there's another if and or but rule affecting DIC. Not so simple. That's why you need help like from us.
And that's why our tax code would fill a small building, just page by page.
I think a large building.
Yeah, probably so. So I hope that's helped you all out there in Radio Land understand a little bit about dependency indemnity compensation. It is one of those programs where there's all kinds of loopholes, basically, we can say that.
Well, yeah. All kinds of if and or buts in my world.
Right. So just keep that in mind. You're going to be able to listen to this program again by clicking on the icon on WMEL, 1300WMEL.com. Just click on the button that says Archives if you have any questions about that. And, of course, call Glenn at 321-633-2012 or stop in his office if you have questions specific to that. Want to share a couple other things here. I was talking about our sponsors for the Veterans Day celebration. Dr. Diaz, he's a local surgeon here, did a wonderful job helping us support the event. Our funeral home sponsor was Beckman Williamson. They're incredible people. Hopefully they'll be hosting when we do a burial benefit show. They'll be one of the sponsors for that. I mentioned Craig Technologies, Candlewood Suites, Legal Rights for You, East Coast Fence, wonderful folks. SCIS, Brian Jaskowitz, also a leader with AUSA, Association of the U.S. Army, Classic Wood Floors, so many more. I want to mention, no doubt, help for our military families, folks. We've got the Dinner for Families of the Deployed coming up on November 27th, and we need your help. We do this every month, but this is a special one. If you want to get involved, go to avetproject.org. Better yet, send an email to kim@avetproject.org. kim@avetproject.org. Don't forget about the Toy Run, 31st Annual. It's going to be on December 2nd. We need everybody to show up, and we need volunteers too. Just give us an email, kim@avetproject.org. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us today on American Warrior Radio. Spread the word. Listen to American Warrior Radio on WMEL or hit us up on Facebook. We'll be seeing you again next week. Probably have a bosun's call. And as always, Glenn,
don't forget, thank a vet.